Support WrestleTalk!
Support each other. I don't know if you've heard, but this Sunday's pay-per-view will see This Is the Greatest Match Backlash between Randy Orton versus Edge, with the whole show being advertised as the greatest match, even though that doesn't make any sense. But you know what they say, the risk is worth the reward. I feel dumber just for saying that. But it's not just fans who are being frustrated by WWE's over-the-top branding. One half of the greatest match itself, Edge, doesn't like the tagline either. Edge told ESPN there's no such thing as the greatest match ever, as it's subjective, much like the greatest song, movie, or band of all time. But the answer to that last one is Weezer. And that when he found out how WWE were going to advertise his Orton rematch, he laughed because I didn't think it was serious. Then I realized fairly quickly it was. Then my reaction was, is this wise? Because anytime you say something the greatest ever beforehand, you're setting yourself up for failure. All I can do is take it as if this is all just a bonus and in a weird way a compliment, or it's a giant rib. Would I have preferred they not build it as that? Absolutely. According to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Edge vs Randy Orton is the only match to have been taped in advance of Backlash this Sunday, so WWE have enough time to edit it to live up to its billing. Or it's all just a giant swerve. Make sure to watch mine, Luke and Laurie's Backlash predictions up later today for what we think is really going to happen. Do you think Edge vs Orton will live up to "This is the greatest match" name? Let me know in the comments, because I'll be replying to people from out of Johnny Gargano's weird NXT TakeOver house set. But it's not just Edge who's criticizing WWE, as the other half of the greatest match of all time that hasn't even happened yet, Randy Orton, has started shooting on NXT. On Sunday night, NXT held its first big show of the no fans era, NXT TakeOver in Your House. The set design was incredible, and the promotion did the best it could with the situation, still managing to put on a hugely enjoyable show with Keith Lee versus Johnny Gargano, an excellent first showing for Karrion Kross, and Io Shirai winning her first ever title. NXT thought it was safe. But lurking in its house was Randy Orton, who tweeted from out of nowhere, "Heard NXT TakeOver in Your House was great. Slapping my leg for you guys. Sincerely, #leg slap." Leg slap presumably being a derogatory term for how NXT wrestlers actually put in effort. NXT locker room leader Tommaso Ciampa didn't take kindly to Orton's tweet and replied himself, "My daughter has been having trouble sleeping. Luckily, I found a remedy. Randy Orton matches. Better than NyQuil. Sincerely, #an entire locker room who busted their asses." Which only brought out the Viper's more dickish personality traits, replying again, "Looks like I hurt the feelings of the self-appointed locker room leader of a wrestling school. Let me know what time #leg slap class starts so I can take my game to the next level." Even Orton's wife got in on the action, tweeting, "Randy, isn't that the same guy who took credit for all those great matches that he didn't put together?" But maybe Orton would be tempted to developmental by their new big belt. Thanks for your support on Patreon. No one names their kid this anymore. Larry. Twitter user @BeltVanDam from BeltTalk.com tweeted in May that new WWE Championships were in design, and that as soon as they were finished, we'd be seeing them on our screens. Wrestling Inc. is reporting that the two belts set to be revamped are the NXT Championship, that will be the same design, only bigger, and the United States Championship, which is going to have a completely new look. The report states that once replica belts can be sold on WWEshop.com, the designs will be revealed on TV. There's plenty more news on WrestleTalk.com, including an AEW and WWE Twitter war, Tamina getting a new character, what percentage of the WWE roster want to leave, Corey Graves quitting Twitter, and the SmackDown viewership for last Friday's episode. Spoilers, it's not very good. The links are in the video description below for all of those at WrestleTalk.com. But now, it's time for last night's episode of Raw. In about 5 minutes. This is the greatest go-home show, Backlash. Kicked off with the Raw Women's Champion Asuka being interrupted by the Women's Tag Team Champions Bayley and Sasha Banks and the SmackDown Women's Champion It was also Bayley. It's a great time to be a fan of women's wrestling in WWE. Bayley, Sasha, Asuka, Io Shirai down in NXT. Nothing can stop all our favourites with all the The Omni Flare. Ah, god damn it. A few promo interruptions later, we got a three-way tag with Banks and Bayley versus the Iconics versus the opponents for later tonight, Asuka and Flair. But how will they coexist? All sarcasm aside, even without Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey, WWE are treating their women's division with incredible respect, giving them both the opening and closing matches of this episode. They're actually committing to their Women's Revolution mantra from several years ago, far beyond the efforts of other major promotions. Asuka picked up the win for Charlotte to then beat her up after the match. What a babyface. Seth Rollins interviewed Rey Mysterio remotely, where Rey launched a heat-seeking Aleister Black, hitting Rollins so hard it started a tag match between Black and Carrillo versus Seth's disciples of Murphy and Theory. Black and Murphy have incredible in-ring chemistry together, so it's a shame it was just used as quick fodder for yet another disciples' loss, and then heels beat down babyfaces post-match. Christian made his WWE return next to interview Edge on The Peep Show, but instead of hijinks, the segment focused on Edge building a feud with the concept of having the greatest match ever, rather than against Orton himself, where he freaked out that everyone's putting the expectations so high. Expectations that include still on the payroll Kurt Angle. They're really getting their 90-day non-compete clauses worth. Who chose Edge to win the greatest match ever, reading the auto cue like WWE had one of his many kids hostage. In the latest edition of the Street Profits vs Viking Raiders feud, the two teams competed in a decathlon of sports like flip cup, sword fighting, and dance-off. The two teams tied yet again, keeping their feud stuck in some kind of lockdown purgatory. Angel Garza and Andrade dominated KO in a US title #1 contenders triple threat next, but in a significant strategic oversight, the heels, who were in a faction together with a manager who's supposed to give them some kind of master plan direction, never once thought to discuss amongst themselves who would win this match in advance. This led to Garza and Andrade having a chop-heavy wild brawl, knocking over Vega. The final third of the match, with all three men going at each other, was really exciting, for Andrade to steal the win, pinning Garza off a KO stunner. Caruso alert! After MVP heartwarmingly wore a Shad Gaspard t-shirt backstage, what a heel, we got him hosting a VIP lounge segment for his special guest Lashley. The cheeky scamp that he is though, Drew McIntyre came out instead, where the two built the Backlash title match around moves, making it just as much about Claymore versus Full Nelson as Lashley versus McIntyre. Drew and MVP have really good chemistry on the mic together. This led into the tag match between Bobby and MVP versus the Viking Raiders, which also brought out the babyface brigade of the Street Profits, who provided more crowd noise than the 30 or so captive NXT recruits. The tag match was really fun, and while the Anything You Can Do feud has been borderline nonsense, it has given the Raiders some much needed character in the ring, and I was very much into the burgeoning Scottish Vikings team up between them and Drew. Caruso alert! Lana said everything's fine in a backstage interview mid-match, definitely foreshadowing her getting involved on Sunday, and then Lashley made Eric pass out in the Full Nelson. That's 1 point for the Master Lock, and a loss for the Claymore, as Drew hit Bobby with one immediately after, but Lashley stayed on his feet while stumbling away. But rightly so, after they should have main evented last week, the final spot was reserved for Asuka versus Charlotte, following Asuka's awesome slap of Flair backstage earlier. Pulling double duty after tagging in the opener, Asuka took on Charlotte in a terrific 30-minute plus main event, with plenty of added context at ringside, with Sasha Banks, Bayley and the Iconics brawling, and the spectre of Nia Jax looming in the background, who distracted Asuka for Flair to win. Well, kind of. Asuka actually kicked out before the 3 count. A lot of people are very down on Charlotte winning yet again. Asuka is in the title match this weekend, and Flair gets another victory after beating Asuka last week and every other time in her career, and not even putting over Shirai at NXT TakeOver. I, however, really don't mind it, and I'll tell you why. This match was built around how Asuka has never beaten Charlotte. That's a genuinely intriguing story that should build to Asuka eventually beating Flair on a big stage. For me, this is an important chapter in that overall arc, furthering the Jax match for this Sunday, but also setting up Flair as her next opponent. I know, where's Liv Morgan? Where's Bianca Belair? But right now, I'm really into the Flair versus Asuka rivalry and the excellent matches they've been having. That was this week's Raw in about 5 minutes. What do you think about WWE's booking of Charlotte? Tell me I'm an idiot for not sharing your opinion in the comments down below, because I'll be replying. From out of the impossible expectations WWE have set for Edge versus Randy Orton. I really enjoyed how seriously WWE booked their women's division this week, and the Drew versus Lashley feud continues to have a big fight feel. But for a go-home show, I thought it needed a much bigger cliffhanger angle. This week's Raw is average. Like what I'm wearing? Well, get your Lariat t-shirt by going to WrestleTalkMerch.com now, or by clicking the picture on screen on what are 11 times wrestlers secretly thanked each other in the ring. Click the video on the right for Adam Blompier's latest list video. And if you like what we're doing here, please go follow us on Twitter at WrestleTalk_TV, and you can follow me at Ollie Davis, who I've been, and that was wrestling.